call the August 28th, 2024 meeting of the Oswego County Industrial Agency to order. This will be our annual meeting, so there are a few items that we're going to have to do in here. We don't do it every week, every month. To begin with, we'll take a look at the minutes. Assume everyone had a chance to review them.
Can we do a roll call first?
Roll call?
Yeah.
Sure. Tim?
You bet. Nick Allen.
Present.
Mary Ellen Silbro.
Present.
Mark Garfield.
Present.
Trish Peter Clark.
Present.
Tim Stahl. I am here. And Gary Standard. Present. And then Pat Carroll is absent excuse.
Okay. And
Nick, we have some staff and guests in the room today. For staff, we have Austin Wheelock, our Chief Executive Officer. I'm Kevin LaMontagne. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the agency. Our General Counsel, Kevin Caricoli, is here at the table. We have 3 guests in the room relating to one of the projects on the agenda. It's Ariel, Lane, and Noah here to represent the transfer of the iFreeze and 28 Lakeview Holdings pilot. And that's it.
all right. Thank you. To the minutes. Can we get a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second, Tricia, Mark. Any comments or questions or adjustments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are passed. Notice of the meeting was placed in the Pal Times on August 14th, 2024. Did we want to skip the treasurer's report for now?
Yeah, let's go back to that after.
Okay.
After these gentlemen can.
So we'll turn the floor over to you, Kevin.
Sure. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction and turn it over to the gentleman here.
Okay.
We know iFreeze is the company name for the former Bird's Eye Freezer in the city of Fulton. It was acquired in 2018 by a company Restarted. We recently, this organization approved, it's under a pilot. We also have some financing in place with the current owner. We recently, some months back, we approved a transfer of the ownership. This building basically has been for sale for some time. That particular deal that we consented the ownership change didn't go through, but we have a new interested party who's in the industry of cold storage that's interested in acquiring the freezer. They're in the middle of their due diligence and they've asked the agency to consent to transferring the pilot when the deal is consummated. They're still in the due diligence period and working on finalizing the deal. But I'll turn it over to our guests to just give a little introduction of themselves and what their plans are for the building and where they are in the dealings of the transaction.
Somebody wanted to come over, there's an if you guys wanted to take
I think it's good we can see everyone. So I'm Noah, this is Ariel's Lane. We run a company called Centigrade Logistics, which is a cold storage operator out of Burlington, New Jersey. That business is very similar to the business in iFreeze. It's frozen storage for food and pharmaceutical businesses in New Jersey. There we service more of a port business, so Philadelphia and Newark ports. The business has grown nicely since we bought it, and we're looking to grow. Cold storage facilities are kind of few and far between that haven't been acquired by public companies. We actually got introduced to iFreeze through the deal that Kevin referenced before. We were being brought in to operate the business. The people that ended up walking away from the deal turned it over to us. We were very familiar with it, got to know Tim, Adam, Kareem, the rest of the team there, got comfortable with it and stepped into place to acquire it, and that's kind of what brought us here today. Our business plan on the original business that we currently run was to keep everything the same, all the employees in place, to grow it. Same thing would be with iFreeze. We have some customers that from our current business that we want to bring up here, which can hopefully develop into an even larger business. And depending on how things go, we may look to expand the facility even further to do some either more refrigerated or frozen business in the area. So that's kind of a background of how we're here. I don't know if there's any questions or more direct questions I could.
Yeah, I just want to both comment and question. So what you guys are here today is requesting consent from the IDA to transfer the ownership transfer of the pilot to Centigrade.
Yes.
And then you have also described that there may be future potential projects where you may come back to the IDA to seek additional benefits in the future.
If we can.
Yeah, I think it's something that would have to be tied to a project in particular, but if there was we'll continue to work with you guys if there's something that would be would meet the eligibility threshold of I guess the modification or extension or whatever, whatever related, at that time to come back and
I've
discuss.
spoken to Kevin about it. Maybe I got a little bit ahead of myself there, but I'm aware it would have to be kind of a new building, create
Sure.
new jobs and new opportunities. But again, that's down the line.
Understood.
We want to get our feet wet in the business, make sure it is what we think it is, grow that business to a point where it needs to expand and then get there.
Yep.
And just understand with our Jersey business, we've done the exact same thing with the business plan there. We've walked in, kept everyone in place, built the business there. We're actually expanding that facility by close to 40,000 square feet, hopefully in the next 2 years. So we're going through that process there. So again, the goal would be to take the business where it sits today, try and optimize it as much as we can. And what I mean by optimize is just create a larger diversity of customers there, and grow that business, and then continue to grow as much as we can within the footprint that we have.
So the plan is, as of now, to keep all employees in place, in terms of retention, 100%, as well as.
It's the only way we can do these deals. Where we kind of look at ourselves as like, how could we come and help everyone who's there? We look at ourselves as kind of like the sales organization of the larger organization, because we've looked at a ton of cold storage facilities across the Northeast, and I think the biggest issue they all have is that they're so focused on the operations of the business. The second you lose one customer, a customer goes from holding 5,000 pallets to 1,000 pallets, it is such a massive hit to the bottom line, especially like a facility like iFreeze. They have 2-3 customers that make up a very large percentage of that facility. So where we like to come in and say, okay, let us start to have preemptive calls with a bunch of other potential opportunistic customers, so that we're never in a position where if you lose a customer, where all of a sudden your bottom line goes to, and then it becomes a really big issue. So, we like to get ahead of that, and I think from our standpoint, we're like the sales team.
Sure. So do you anticipate in the future you guys would bring some of the pharmaceutical here to that Fulton plant, or would it stay primarily with the food storage?
So pharmaceutical is a little bit tricky. There's like certain grade pharmaceutical products that we could never touch because of the type of facilities we have. Those are very specialized facilities with like different certifications that are needed. In the facility in Jersey, we actually do a ton of gel packs for like Express Scripts, for instance, which is one of our largest customers. So like we'll do all of we'll get ambient gel packs. We will freeze their gel packs and then ship them out to them, and then we use those for all of their sort of direct consumer shipments that they have for all types of pharmaceutical goods that are going across the globe.
That's interesting.
So like that's, when we say pharmaceutical, it's kind of like helping them from a packaging standpoint with shipping out pharmaceutical goods, so not necessarily housing, the pharmaceuticals themselves.
That clarified that.
Yeah, but the customers themselves are pharmaceutical customers, so we work a lot with like a lot of these compounding pharmacies, Express Scripts, stuff like that. So that's like 20-30% of the business.
And let me just state really quick here, just we are live, we're live streamed, so just make sure anything you share is not stuff you're not comfortable sharing in that kind of a setting. Tim, you had a question as well, so just wanted to.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting use of the phrase of get your feet wet in the industry you're in. But why Oswego County? Why are you guys looking to come up here? I mean, what have you seen here that maybe you haven't seen other places, or what is it that makes this attractive?
I think what's interesting is that we've done a lot of research on what it would take to actually build out a new facility, and the costs are exorbitant. I could spitfire a ton of dollar per square foot of what it would take from every element of building out a building, and I think to create a nice moat around the business, finding a facility that's in a nice area that doesn't have a ton of cold storage around it, but yet still has a significant need, and understanding now what it would take for an Americold or a Lineage to build a new facility, because of the basis we'd be in at this building, our pricing can always maintain its competitive nature, right? So someone comes in, builds a new facility here, I'm not worried that I'm losing customers from price competitiveness, and that's how we think about it, So, in New Jersey, that's a whole different beast and a whole different ball of wax when we're talking about port business. So what we like about here, it's not port centric. It's definitely a more seasonal business in the sense that it's crop based, and different types of consumers. But we feel really comfortable with that.
Well, I wondered about that because we have a port here in Oswego, and I was curious if that had something to do with it or not. So.
Not as of yet, right? Like it's something that if there's potentiality there for food, for food to become like a large part of what that port brings in, then it would be incredible for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a review of what terms are left on the current.
Sure, yeah, I was gonna give a few details just mostly for the board, and I'm sure all the way from the line team. So the pilot for 28 Lakeview Holdings, the operating company is iFreeze. They just completed their 5th year, and they're on a 20-year UTEP schedule. So the first year at 60%, like the second 5-year period is starting in 2025. So presumably, depending on the closing timeline and so forth, that'd be the first payment they would take. So they're familiar. They have the pilot agreement. They have the pilot schedule. Of course, any work recording tax has already been used. We've also discussed that. We do have a loan outstanding with the current owner, guaranteed by the current owner and so forth. That'll be paid off at closing. It's been paid down quite a bit from its initial amount, so I'm down to about $30,000. So that'll be taken care of.
Welcome to Oswego.
And this is a portion of that building, right?
This is
The other business is still operating.
yeah, the other business is this is the relatively new addition to that building. I mean, it's still decades old, 40 years old or something, 50 maybe. But it's on the south side of the other processing facility that's there.
Yeah, approximately how much square footage are you guys acquiring?
So it's about 128,000.
128, okay.
And we've sort of seen the K&N facility that sort of lives directly behind it.
Yeah. So it's the new warehouse that was built.
Correct.
Newer warehouse, I guess,
Yeah.
not new.
Now,
And we know that at some point K&N was putting that facility up for sale. I don't know if it's still up for sale.
we've seen it for sale on some national listing websites, but that's all I can say.
How many employees do they have there now?
I think, well, you know better than me,
No.
maybe, but yeah, it's actually more than I was gonna say. And the story on this is when the facility was purchased, it was in dire need of basically rebuilding the refrigeration system, as well as the offices had turned moldy, and I probably never been shut down properly. And the
It was-
system was out of date as well, so.
That was one of my questions, is how is the condition of the building? Do you have to go in and retrofit? Do you have to,
There's some concerns,
some concerns?
Yeah.
It's not a turnkey.
and not costly concerns, but some concerns. And most specifically the roof.
Right. Big building, big roof.
So
No other questions?
Okay, this is nothing, are we voting on this?
Yes, we do have to have a vote, we can do it now, there's a resolution for the consent to basically this transfer, much like we've done.
So can we get a motion to consent to the ownership transfer of iFreeze?
So moved.
Mark, second.
Aye.
Gary, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to Oswego, gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it.
All
it's
right.
easier than I thought.
Yeah.
You haven't made it out this door yet.
Thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
So
Thank
we'll work with them in, assuming everything before, we'll have a, those agreements.
Okay.
Get your feet transferring all of this. Freezing food.
I got it.
So we have to review.
Ideal use of a phrase. Thanks, guys. Take care.
I don't want cold feet. Now, if you did get cold feet, that would be good.
Okay.
Let's go back to.
Okay, treasurer's report.
Alrighty, I'll take that. So you have the typical financial statement in your packet. This one happens to be the year end, because our year end is July 31st. As far as we know, everything is booked in here properly for the auditor. It's basically ready to go to send to the auditors. They haven't done that yet until after this meeting. I'll do one final review. I think also would agree, although I didn't talk about making this comment. I think one of our issues this year has been a lot of activity and putting projects on the board that haven't closed. And we've talked about this before. So you can see I jumped to the income statement this time. Usually I cover the balance sheet first, sorry about that. But I think year in review is one of a lot of billable activity that hasn't billed yet. We're 291 versus 356. Our goal is, I'm not exactly sure the budget figure, but basically we want to be around 450 to really cover costs and put some. I'm sorry, I'm on the income statement, it's actually the fourth printed page of the financial. Sorry to do that right there. I should start at the beginning. So revenue at 291,000 versus 357 last year. It's been on the fee revenue. You can see a pickup in the interest. All in, we're about 53,000 short of last year, but still a bit short of where we wanted to end the year. Certainly, we had intended to end the year over 400,000.
We anticipated closing like 6 projects in the month of July, and for various reasons, one of them closed, and like 5 of them have been pushed into August, and some of them may
August
still
is over,
close.
so,
I know,
yeah.
so it's one where they're going to close. It's just things have popped up that,
So we don't see the fruits of our activity really yet in the fee income is one way.
We'll see him in next year's report.
Oh, yeah.
oh, well, you may see them in next month's or in September's report,
Yeah.
because they're, and I would say, you know, consistently across the board, they're not of any issues created by the IDA, it's primarily just,
Other project issues, financing.
yeah, I mean, you know, we move at a certain rate, and other entities, from financing to even the project, you know, owner, some other things, they can't necessarily move as fast as they think they can, so.
It's kind of normal stuff, but we just had a lot of it this year.
Mhm.
And typically our fall income isn't very high, so we have a fair amount of cash flow in fee income in
Yeah.
the fall.
We'll have a very good start for the
Do you book
24 year.
that stuff this year?
No, we
Like,
only
you don't
book
book
when it's
anything at all?
closed, no, we don't do any progress, like,
It
you know,
stinks because
progress
there's so
booking.
much work that's been done in this last calendar year, you know, the
Mhm.
last
Absolutely.
Yeah.
fiscal year of the
I mean, we could
organization.
internally kind of look at it as, hey, these are projects that were started in this year, but obviously we don't book it until
Ready
it's
to
ready to close.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes they don't close. Sometimes you get them to the finish line, and for whatever reason they don't close.
I guess that would just be a question for the auditors, because I think about it like in my world, right? Like we do the service in
Mhm.
December, we never get paid till January or February, but it goes back into December's revenue,
Yeah.
so it's kind of there. So I think I would just ask the question, because it'd make your year end look a lot better. I mean, I get it, we didn't actually physically close,
Right.
but the projects were started, is there
I'll
something we
do a
can
little
do?
bit
Yeah.
of that. Mhm.
If we had done that maybe in the first week of August, we maybe have done that, but at where we are right now might be tough. But I get where you're going, Tricia, and I appreciate that.
We can look into that. I
We
know-
can do an adjustment, but I just, I don't
Yeah,
know, I'm
yeah,
just curious to see what they say about it.
The other big thing on the income statement while we're on this page is one entry that I've made is in the allowance for loan losses. So now I'm jumping down to the bottom of the income statement, which is on page 1. You see $119,000 charge there. This is something we do every year end. We looked. The reality is we have just a very small number of loans that are affecting the.
No,
So
I wasn't,
next
I missed what
page.
you, where are you looking at?
This one, the profit and loss statement.
Okay,
And then allowance for loan losses,
Oh,
which is
okay.
account number
4.91.
4.91, just another kind of significant thing that, particularly this month. We have a number of, well, there's really 4 factors that have driven that number. So every year, we always have a reserve for uncollectible debt or for loan losses of any, you know, if it's a complete loss or partial write-off, we've had all the above. We go through every year, look at our loans, we risk rate them with a percentage, so the year-end balance times the percentage calculates the loan loss. I review this with the auditors, like, they and I have come up with, we pretty much, you know, I know what they're expecting, I know what their standards are, so, I'm gonna have to use some names.
Do you wanna wait and do it off camera?
Maybe we could talk a little bit more about that in executive session. There's some slow payer, we've talked about all of them before. There's a food processor in Fulton, there's a wood processor in Williamstown, bankrupt lawn care company. So these things are familiar. I can run through details real quick in executive session of the names. But we look at those very closely and we're booking reserves, but like the wood processor, we haven't received a payment in 12 months. Now over 12 months because they've been on deferral. They're not because of struggles.
It's not that
they've
they
had.
have missed an actual payment, it's
Yeah.
we've actually allowed
So
that.
we
but-
had to reserve, we went from 50% reserve to 75% reserve, and that's a particularly large borrower in our portfolio. They have 4 loans in different loan programs, for some history of buildings and different things, trying to save buildings. Food processor in Fulton, poultry processor, they've been paying, they've been paying now for over 12 months, believe it or not. And so we've reserved them, but they're reserved at 35%. Last year it was 25%, but so we're still kind of the same neighborhood. But again, it's fairly large loans, so 10% or 15 percentage point change in the reserve, can add some dollars to that reserve. So that's basically what's going on. All this will be reviewed in every detail of it. All the calculations will be reviewed with the auditor. They look at loans that maybe we have in deferment. They look at our late payers and our records to make sure we're catching everything. But it's pretty straightforward.
Kevin, this is on the P and L, so if these folks were to make full payment
Yep.
next week,
Good question.
Yeah. This is just theoretical.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, then it's a gain to us, really. So let's say one of those companies sold their building and we got paid off or something like that. Yep, we would get the loan proceeds back, and then assuming nothing else changed, the loan reserve would go down and it'd be income into our income statement instead of right now it's a cost. So we're sitting with a pretty I think our auditors would tell you our reserve is fairly conservative, but we're in a fairly risky lending business too, so, not just in general, but small business loans and things of that
So
nature.
this is on the income statement, this
Yeah.
is money that we're putting,
We, now it's banked on the balance sheet,
So
basically.
we took 90,000 last year in banking, we're taking another 120,000 this year in banking, that much
Correct.
more.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And primarily
So-
do those for loans, yeah.
So that's on the balance sheet
Sure.
somewhere.
Yep, it is. We can flip to the balance sheet now on, which the first part of the package should start there maybe, but it's a little hard to find. Where is it? It's on the very bottom of page 2. There's a long list of loans on page 2 that begins on
Loan
page
loss
1.
reserve.
Yeah. So you see that jump the same, jumped to 451 from 332.
Okay.
So that's basically the bank account the protection, our insurance against bad loans, basically. Self-insured, in a sense.
Okay.
Yep, but that's, hopefully we get some of that back, hopefully some of those pay off, there's buildings involved with most of them, so. The other one was we'll come to that, we'll come to OC COVID later.
So kind of just transactionally, if one of these were to go bad and we were to collect the collateral, we were to sell the collateral, is that money that we receive go to offset this line?
There's 2 parts really, the money comes in and pays off the receivable goes back into the loan fund to cash, and then the receivable that's for these loans gets paid to 0. And then there's a second part of that transaction, which is reducing the loan loss reserve by that amount for that client, and then that goes basically to profit or reduction of costs in that particular year.
And these are all secured loans, so that's not
Yeah.
an issue.
And
Typically
no
not an
surprises
issue.
book there, they're all loans we've talked about before.
Okay.
Those are my main comments for the financials. The auditors will come in and they're done, I guess at the October, when do we normally do
Yeah,
this?
so we'll get into that in a little bit about the engagement with Grossman,
Yeah.
but yeah, the schedule will be coming down in September, providing us that in October, which October 31 is the due date of our
We didn't have any audit adjustments last year, I anticipate the same this year. We'll see.
Make a motion?
Motion by Tim. Second by Mark. Any other questions or comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, Brooks and St. Moore.
Yep, I'm gonna cover this one too, I'm looking at Austin's cheat sheet about who's covered what. So, Gross and St. Amore is our auditor, they've prepared a engagement letter for the 2024 audit. Audit work has started to a small degree, it'll pick up more here in a few weeks, or over the next few weeks. Typical gap, engagement letter, and I'm flipping the other part about cost. Should have highlighted. Pardon me.
It's right on that, right, this is right here.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, 14,250. So basically they've quoted to do the IDA audit and everything that goes with that, including attending the meetings and such, 14,250. It was about 13,900 last year and 12,500 the year before that. So the audit services, I've seen stats that those prices are going up in double digit kind of inflation due to their recruiting challenges. Staffing and payroll challenges, so I think it's a reasonable increase. I think it's overall still a reasonable price for the size of organization with the assets that they have and stuff. Number of bank accounts and other things, so, number of loans. It's fairly complex.
We need a motion on this?
Yes, we'd like to approve the engagement, authorize Austin to sign the engagement letter to get this.
How many years in a row was the IDA use them?
Right now, well, I don't,
Going back, we've used them for probably close to 10 years.
it
But
might even be a little more because was it last year?
we had to have a switch of every 5 years. We have to have a different team come.
Right.
We can't utilize the same team more than 5 years. We can use the same firm, but we cannot use the same team with that firm.
So we had a different, Christina signed this letter last, oh no, she will.
So I would say it's at least 11 years at this point.
Use the firm, we've had different partners.
Do you guys think that at any point in time it'd be worth it to RFP to see about just some other competitive stuff, so you have a different set of eyes looking at it? I know it's not the same reviewers or the same auditors that are looking at it, but it's also the same firm.
No, you're-
kind of as a due diligence, I mean, obviously not for this year, cause
Yeah,
we're.
I think that that's probably fair to say. I know that
Makes sense.
they're very competitive and, there was some advantages to utilizing them. They understand our processes and everything, whereas bringing someone new in is gonna, one, will take additional time for them to do it, but also additional staff time to kind of catch them up. But I think that's fair to look at for future.
Yeah,
Future
definitely,
ones.
I'm not suggesting it for this year, but I think for next year, it'd be good to take a
It's
look
a
at,
very
and maybe we
it's a
still
good
choose them,
practice.
but.
Yeah, at least you then have these
Survey the field.
Do the due diligence, that's all.
I do know, and I can say from the perspective of being involved in this for several years now, it does take a significant amount of staff time, even with a group that's been here doing this. During that, I would say really from August 1st through now, and then from now through October 31st, there's a lot of work that goes into it on the staff side. So I have a preference just because I know what it means to us, but I think that just to be fair and transparent, it would be good to kind of see what that looks like and in the future.
And there's no necessary requirement that if another firm were to come back $500 cheaper, we would make the decision that the cost to our organization, exceeds that. It's just be good for us to be able to see.
Right. Yeah, we aren't obligated to use low bids for, especially for professional services.
Good point, thank you.
Make a motion to accept the
Sorry.
engagement, oh wait.
Oh, no, yeah, no, go ahead.
Accept the engagement letter.
I'll second that.
Tricia and Mark. Any other comments or questions? I'd just like to say that my relationship with these people has been very good over the time that they've been here, and I don't see any issue with going out and getting another quote, seeing where we fall, but got a feeling we're gonna probably end up back with these guys based on the price. Looking at that price compared to what I pay for my business, and it's a lot simpler in my business.
Been involved in
A lot.
it.
So, at any rate, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Election of officers.
So before we get into it, I just want to say that there's 3 items here on the agenda that are sort of atypical to the IDA agenda. These are items that we're going to cover under the annual meeting portion of our of this, and but per our bylaws, the annual meeting for the IDA takes place in the first meeting after the end of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from August 1st through July 31st. This is the first meeting of the IDA in our new fiscal year. Going forward, this is when we'll be doing this and doing election of officers, either reaffirmation of policies or approval of new policies, and then third item is looking at the OOC IDA Administrative Service Agreement.
So, as far as election of officers is concerned, we need to take someone to nominate a slate at this point.
We did just do this a few months ago, so if you guys are comfortable with the current slate, which is Chair Nick Nally, Vice Chair Mark Recco, and Secretary Treasurer Tim Stahl, if there would be a motion for that.
I'll make that motion, I'll second.
So moved.
Gary and Tricia.
I noticed the people not named were quick to put that forward.
Usually it's the person who's not here that's volunteered for
Is
something.
there anyone that would like to nominate Pat for an office? Any other slate that would like to be presented? All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Committee assignments. I've got a list here that I've proposed for committee assignments. Taking the 3 people off and adding 3 new people to the board, we have to make a few adjustments to this. We have 3 committees that we have to constitute every year: the governance committee, the finance committee, and the audit committee. Governance committee, I don't know if you want to describe what they do again.
Well, governance really deals with the general day-to-day and week-to-week, month-to-month operation of the organization, reviewing bylaws, reviewing policies that are general, dealing with anything that comes from an administrative nature. That's what the governance committee essentially does. These are all, by the way, committees that are required under the ADO, the Budget Office. for public authorities. So whether it's the IDA, whether it's the port, whether it's any other agency out there, everyone has to have a governance and an audit committee. If you are doing any type of lending, you have to have a finance committee. So that's why we have these three committees, and each one of them has a charter, right, essentially bylaws that you operate under. And we have them. We're gonna reaffirm all of those the next action we take. But so that's what the governance committee does.
And per our bylaws, those committees are appointed by the chair of the board.
Does any of you vote for it? It's just more informational.
I mean, I think it's one of those where if you're not comfortable with the position, maybe there could be a potential change, but I think.
I'll give you the list, and if you guys don't like it, then we can talk about it.
I was just looking to see for.
Governance committee, myself as the chair, Pat, Mel, Mark, and Gary. Finance, Tim is the chair, myself, Mel, Tricia, and Gary. Audit, Mark is the chair, myself, Pat, Tricia, and Tim. Okay? And the audit committee basically meets with the CPAs a couple of times a year to go through the process of the audit and the findings and any, recommendations or issues that they come up with. And so it's 1 or 2 meetings a year.
Yeah, so we'll schedule an audit committee meeting next month when the auditors are here in town to kind of give a baseline, similar to what we did last year, a baseline of what to expect during the audit, and then we'll have another meeting that will take place just prior to our October IDA meeting to go over the results of that and to make recommendations to the full board.
I think last year they invited new members to any of them. You wouldn't necessarily be voting, so to speak. If you wanted to get a bigger feel, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be something we would do again. We would invite to all board members, especially since we have some new ones that would like to understand that better. Yeah.
So the meetings will be open, and the audit committee itself will vote if there's any votes in the meeting. Okay. So that covers number 6. Policies, reaffirmation of policies. This is, who's gonna describe this? Kevin?
I can start it, but we did an internal review of policies. There were no changes needed for any of the existing policies. Just for your information, we are working on a new policy that will be up for vote when it is ready, related to workplace violence policy. However, what we need to do first is Operation Oswego County at their next full board meeting needs to adopt that first, and then what would happen is the idea would be adopting the same policy that OOC has done, since there's an administrative agreement where the staffing is through OOC. So it's just a timing issue there. We could have had it for this one, but it made sense to kind of have the other entity approve it first, so that'll be for September. But they're going through all the other policies. There wasn't a need at this point to change. We may look at in the near future bylaws through the governance committee, and those changes can happen as needed. It doesn't have to happen at this meeting.
So we have approximately 21 policies. And again, this is not unlike any other public authority that's out there, and municipality, the county, towns, cities, anybody in that operates under either the general municipal law or the authority budget office, virtually have to have almost each one of these. There are mandatory policies that every organization must have, like a code of ethics, conflict of interest policy, cybersecurity notification policy now, investment policy, the procurement policy. These are all things that us who are in local government are familiar with. Well, it's the same here with the IDA. Sexual harassment policy, the whistleblower policy was a big one a couple of years ago that the state was came out and said, oh, everybody's got to have a whistleblower policy. But we've got that. As Austin mentioned, the workplace violence prevention policy is also a mandatory policy now. In addition to that, though, because we're the IDA, we have the uniform tax exempt policy, we have our solar policy, we have an annual assessment policy, we have a policy related to applications and approval modifications. You remember, somebody comes in, they have an existing business, but halfway through the application, they wanna change it or modify it in some way. Now we've got a policy for that. So we have a FOIL policy, minority women-owned business policy, project approval policy. We've got policies for just about everything. They're all posted on the agency's website, and as Austin mentioned, that too is getting an update. And so for today, and for our purposes, what we're simply doing is reaffirming each and every one of our policies. And then as those policies need to be updated or modified, again, as Austin mentioned, with particularly workplace violence prevention policy, we'll bring that to the board for individual ratification. Any questions?
Now, all those policies have to be reviewed by the governance committee?
Well, that's a great question. Some of them are governance, some of them are audit, some of them are finance, right? So, the loan approval policy, because we are, as I mentioned, an organization that does lend, we have to have a finance committee. So any policy related to lending approvals would typically go through the finance committee for recommendation to the full board. So that's how that works.
But they don't have to be updated or anything, it's kind of like unless somebody sees an issue, we
Yeah,
just go over.
and in fact, it's, again, really good question, and it is as needed. The Authority Budget Office comes out with policy guidance. The last guidance memo they came out with was in 2022, and it lists several different policies, and most every one of them, their guidance says it's to be reviewed annually, updated as necessary, and then maintained on the agency's website, which is what we're doing. So I think we're between, the staff here, we're confident that we are in compliance with what the ABO is expecting of this organization, and just looking to reaffirm it. Again, best practices, do it at the annual meeting of the organization, and here we are.
Is that something that the audit firm also reviews every year as well as part of their audit, or no?
They look at policies from the lens of audit. In terms of, they're not necessarily, so there are certain things that happen, like they will request a letter from Kevin in terms of, are we in compliance? They'll request a letter from Barclay Damon, are we in compliance? And so they're not doing that deep dive on that, they're relying on other entities who would work on our behalf to do that for us.
But to that point, if you recall in prior audits, we have had some notes related to check writing authority and reconciliation, right? So we created a policy, right? We don't have that posted on our website because it's more of an internal policy, but we do have a checking account reconciliation policy, right? So that was a direct response to an audit note.
Now, can policies only be updated once a year?
No.
Okay, so
As needed, and as you know, I mean, the state every once in a while will come down with some type of a mandate, you gotta put this policy in place and you have until such time to do it. So that we'll handle that as they come along.
There are certain policies that were developed because we took on a certain loan program or thing. So if we were to, say hypothetically, get out of a program, it may reduce our requirements, and so we could then either rewrite or eliminate a policy that was specific to something in particular. There's none that come to mind, but it's something like that.
We had the loan program, the interest rate policy, we just dealt with a couple of meetings ago, where we adjusted, or maybe it's been more now, maybe it was last year.
It was last year.
Where we adjusted it to prime as opposed to the 3% because of the interest rate increases nationwide. So just to stay competitive.
Well, no, I do understand, I mean, working at the state fair, we had a lot of policies, and I used to hate the word policy, but then I found out they cover your ass. It's a way to get, it really is, we got a bad day, it's towards your policy,
Sure.
and it really stopped a lot of things, so it is very important to have those, so.
Okay, policies are basically, they're created as a result of something that happened.
Exactly.
Or didn't happen.
Yes,
Right,
exactly. So, as long as it's an ability, if it isn't working, that you can change it. That was my big thing, it's not in
Absolutely.
stone.
No,
If
but
it isn't working, change your policy and then move ahead. Okay.
You just made our meeting PG on YouTube, didn't this
Look, I'm just glad it's PG, with me it's usually ours.
We're gonna get blacklisted now.
year. No advertising revenue this month.
Yeah.
And most of our policies are boilerplate from the ABO or the.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah,
site, right?
yeah.
It's
they are.
what's,
Or best practice from other IDAs we've adopted, yeah.
So we have to approve those?
we have to approve.
Reaffirm.
Reaffirm the policies.
Yes.
Not individually, right?
I'll make
No,
a
the-
motion to reaffirm the policies.
Tricia?
I'll second.
Well, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Before I forget, one thing, just, and this was obviously the all of the policies are in the shared drive, but since we have reaffirmed, I'm gonna pass this as an annual statement related to our conflict of interest policy, just affirming that you've received a copy of that, you understand the policy, you agree to comply with the policy. All IDA board members need to sign this on a yearly basis, as well as officers or directors of the organization, so I'm gonna pass this around to be signed.
How much for one would be?
Twice
While
we
we're
got
doing
last
that, we'll move on to number 8, keep things moving here, we have a long agenda. OCIDA Administrative Services Agreement amended and restated.
I'll do this. So, as you remember, the early last year, we had an amended and restored administrative services agreement with Operation Oswego County. Operation Oswego County is the staff support for the IDA, does all the administration for new projects as well as existing projects. With the amount of active pilot agreements and loans and other activity that just runs through this office, it's really necessary to have an agreement on an ongoing basis related to the amount of work that happens. Since this is an agreement between Operation Oswego County and the IDA, the current agreement that we have runs through 12/31/24. So what we are requesting is an extension of that agreement through 12/31/25, so there's no interruptions in contract or service. And what I have asked is to extend that agreement at the current number that we have. We're not looking for an increase for that budget for the 25 year. There's no other changes here. Mark did identify there was a small typo in the on page 2 and 3 there related to, it said 1/1/23 to 12/31/24. What we did is we just updated that 1/1/24 to 12/31/24, and then really the new one is that last there is the 1/1/25 to 12/31. It says compensation has not changed at all related to that. And then all these other items here are sort of the services to be rendered. There's really no change in terms of the service to be rendered. And then the only other thing that we had in here is that if the agreement has not been is not updated, it would automatically update for the for a future year unless otherwise negotiated and agreed to.
At 3%.
With a 3% escalator. So. Any questions related to the agreement?
A question came up, I think it was at the last time we did this, and I don't think we made any changes, so I can just ask, as a reminder to kind of newer board members, Operation Oswego County, the nonprofit employs these staff. They oversee the contracts with those employees, if there are contracts, or the employment. We asked a question about compensation relative to positions in other communities. We talked a little bit about the need to make sure that the pay is market rate or whatever like that. Now, we as the IDA don't have any authority over the amounts that are paid to each of the individuals that Operation Oswego County employs. Do we need anything in this contract that references that? Is there anything that we should do as far as requiring, because again, we have no control over the compensation of the employees. This is more a question for the board, but just a thought about that, with all the compensation stuff, especially at the county we're seeing, and everywhere else, obviously, if Operation Oswego County has trouble employing staff, it would probably at some point come to us, we would see it, but just kind of more to the board, or maybe the team here, what's the thought on that?
So, It's a difficult question to answer in terms of the market rate for the staff, just because one thing I would say is economic development is sort of a niche industry. There's not a huge, I mean, I do have access to information through International Economic Development Council, which is sort of the group that collects information, so I see salary information on a yearly basis for across the industry. We also have an OOC personnel committee that reviews on an annual basis the recommended numbers for the future year. There is representation from this board on that OOC personnel committee that does sort of review that and sort of before it's any changes are made, they approve sort of the recommended numbers.
Is that set by bylaw? How is that representation? I mean, obviously we have Trish here.
Yeah.
But
So-
there's no requirement, I guess the point is that
Right,
you
well-
have a member of that board on this board.
Mhm.
Is there anything we need to set up in the agreement that again would oversee that or would ensure that, or is
I
it
think
not?
that is something that if you would like to add, I think that there's, that would obviously be up to the board if they would wanna say that they have at least some representation on that process. As of now, there is representation in that process, but if that's something that you guys want to include,
I don't know if it's necessary, but I think it's important to at least have that conversation.
I'm not gonna chime in, I hear the conversation, I understand what he's saying, but I don't agree. I think that OC should run their business the way they run their business. We can state that we're concerned, we wanna make sure that the people that we contract with are employed and paid reasonably, but I don't think we should.
I mean, ultimately, you guys have
I
the
mean,
power of
unfortunately-
purse. If you don't agree with the way things are going, you don't have to extend the agreement, or you could request further information from me and I mean, it's, like I said, right now there is some representation that's already built into it, not to say that that's the way it's written, but it's up to you guys how you work.
Okay, and the only other thing I would say about it is that we get a budget, right, that we approve that comes from a dollar amount, which is listed in here. And there includes a line item that would be for personnel.
Right.
So over here, if Operation Oswego County decides that they wanna give a 20% increase because they're under paying what they did in this compensation, our fees do not change.
Right.
So what we are approving as a personnel at a flat rate of whatever it is, and then they would have to make up the difference in their own budget.
Sure.
So that's, I think for us, to Mark's point, is that it's handled through Operation Oswego County. What we care about is that our dollar figures are represented, that the
Sure.
personnel and it's outlined, and then there's the 3% that we would need to be mindful of. If they decide not to, they decide to do an increase, but they didn't think about it when they gave us the
Sure.
price,
Yep.
Yeah.
it's kind of on Operation Oswego County to
Makes
look at.
And there's also the fact that these two are directly appointed by us, right, and work for us, even though they're getting paid through Operations Oswego County. And if they have an issue with how much they're getting paid, they can speak to us and have a conversation at that point too. Which is the way that it's worked in the past, and it's always been fine. I think that, I don't think we wanna muddy the waters, in my opinion. I think we leave it the way that it is, leave it a little more clean cut.
Okay.
And
It's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
Policies.
That's the policy.
And I just wanna say, because it's been mentioned a couple times, I am on the executive committee of Operation Oswego County, I just want that to be disclosed, and I will abstain from voting on the agreement. If you feel it's appropriate.
You don't derive any direct
Okay,
pecuniary benefit from it
I'm not
one
sure
way or
because
the
of
other.
their relationship with the other one, if it made a difference to not to do that.
I'm not, I mean, it's your call, I don't think that there's any legal prohibition against it,
Okay,
but yeah, that's up to you.
Good concern.
So let's take a motion for this.
I'll make it.
Tim, second.
I'll say.
Mark, any further discussion?
Just one point, and that is that you're the first organization. I mean, the executive committee of OOC has reviewed this and has fundamentally approved it, but it goes up to vote for the entire board of directors at their September 9th meeting. So you're provisionally approving this, but subject to the OOC board approval September 9th.
Everyone adjust it and give them more money? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So Trish, just for the record, are you abstaining or are you voting?
No.
in favor?
And moving on, number 9.
Yep, this will be a quick one. This is, we every year have to return 75%, well, interest earned on any HUD bait loan funds that we have that were originally funded with HUD money. These are very old loan programs, so we don't really have any direct communication with HUD anymore, other than returning interest at year end. So this is a standard process. The number is this year $872.10. We generally ask the board's consent to make that transfer. It goes through the county, the way these programs are set up, but we have a cover letter, goes to Kevin Gardner, then we make a wire transfer to a particular account at HUD. So it's
I'll make a motion.
way complex for others.
Moved by Mark, second.
I'll second.
Mel, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Call drop, SVP.
And we can both hit this. So, yeah, I'll start it. So, Cal Drop is one of the projects that is close to closing. One of the things holding it up actually at this point is that they are now looking to mortgage the property, and they have come back to the IDA to, in our initial approvals, we did not, at the time they were looking to internally fund the project. Now that there is an opportunity for them to mortgage it, they are requesting to see if the IDA would consider a mortgage according tax exemption as part of that project. The amount that we've been told, given by them, is not to exceed $5 million for the mortgage finance, so 0.75% of that is $37,500. So that mortgage according tax exemption, if approved, would not exceed the value of that $37,500. So nothing else about the project has changed at this point. We were getting close to close, and they wanted to see if this was something that could be done. And regardless, I believe they will still close. I think it's because of the way that they're financing the project, it would be an additional cost that they did not anticipate originally if the benefit is not provided.
No, typically we would. This is a manufacturing project. It's kind of an ideal industrial park project. We would have gladly. Speaking.
Would have been.
I think we would have been
asked
as
for it.
slam dunk.
Yeah, we would not have been bad at an eye at it, really.
If you recall,
We approved the pilot.
yeah, this is a company that it's a mix of German and stateside companies that merged, and so there was some, as we've seen in the past with some European companies, some reluctance to actually to understand the whole concept of a pilot agreement, and that the agency has to have a legal interest in the property. And so we got through that hurdle with them. They understood it. They said, that's great, we're gonna do it. The project is estimated, right now the project cost is roughly 7.3 million. It's gonna be all of that and maybe approaching 8 million by the time they're all said and done with it. But they are fully committed to doing it. I spoke to Mike Sullivan just yesterday, the day before. And his first words out of his mouth were, we're going ahead with this, we're fully committed to doing it. But now that we understand, and we've got our German partners to understand what's going on here, the concept of lending is particularly in the States, is something that the Germans said, well, if we can borrow some money short term to do this, and we get a benefit out of it, then let's pursue it. So that's the only reason that it was deferred until now.
The project cost originally started at 6.25 million, it then grew to 7.3, and now, like as Kevin said, it's approaching 8 million. So the ability for them to mortgage a portion of this will help their project make sense. So
the only other thing I would add is that if you recall, and certainly forgive you if you don't, but if you recall the plans, the building, the actual construction plans and the as-built drawing, this facility, once it's up there, is really gonna be the gem of that industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be aesthetically beautiful, and the stuff that they're making inside is gonna be really, really neat and create some additional synergy for other opportunities there.
and there's I know we're not in executive session, but there's already conversations of other partners of theirs, wanting to come along and do business in the industrial park.
They've also indicated that they are committed now, they wanna close by the end of this month, which means the end of this week. So we'll have at least one more for the financial statement for the next one.
Okay,
Motion to approve the mortgage tax recording tax exemption request.
Tricia,
I'll second.
no, any questions or comments? Board?
I do, I just want, just to clarify, make sure I got this right. So this would normally have been given to them if they chose to finance in the beginning.
Correct. This would have been part of the package with a pilot and sales tax exemption that we approved last
And it would
year.
have been standard practice for us to approve that.
Correct.
The three exemptions, the real estate property with the pilot, the sales tax exemption, the mortgage recording tax exemption.
And the only reason it wasn't included is because they weren't financing it at the time. And so,
They're putting
all
whole
things
campus
considered,
in.
they're going straight at it, so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Pathfinder Courts,
Right, so Pathfinder Courts LP is a housing development in the city of Fulton. Owner, Oswego County Development Corp is one of their trade unions, but basically they're just restructuring their ownership. This project was under a I don't know how long that pilot was, but a long-term pilot. The pilot last year was its last payment. So the pilot has ended. The only reason they're coming to us for this consent, so they're kind of free and clear of any obligation to get our consent with anything related to pilot, but they are one of our few remaining bonds in the IDA's portfolio, which was a 25-year term. So they have a couple of years left on the bond. They're doing some restructuring and transferring of ownership interests within the general partner. Basically, there's a new subsidiary, I don't know that the entity's new, but there's another subsidiary that'll be taking over a 99% interest of the property, so, and running the business. So there's no change in the operation, it's basically an internal restructuring within the ownership group today. Our comments from Barclay Damon is that often with these transactions, this type of transfer, really the tax benefits and everything would have happened earlier. So it's a little, it's sort of standard, it's a little bit unusual that it happens so late in the project in this case, so. The tax benefits have long go. The certain tax credits are good for the first period of time, which I think is 10 years, and then generally there's no ownership change after that, so. We've reviewed, our counsel at Barclay Damon has reviewed documents and the transaction structure, and, greenlights the transaction in that regard.
there's no impact on us.
No real impact,
No,
they
it's
need our
just
consent for the agreements,
It's just the existing bonds that are almost expired at this point. Similar to, we did this for another project that was a manufacturing project before, but that one also had other benefits associated with it at the time. So at this point, there's no IDA incentives that are still ongoing on this project. Other than that initial financing.
Yeah, the financing package is still in place.
I'll make that motion.
take a second.
Second.
Tim and Gary, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Looks like we need to move into executive session.
We should, because it's a loan that is sort of in the middle of approval. Okay. I think that's why I did it, yeah.
Alright.
Okay, so Kevin, can you state why, for the record, why we need to go into executive session for these?
Yep, to discuss the financial history of a particular individual or corporation and I suppose pending litigation at this point. And those are the two reasons under public officers law.
Can I get a motion to move into executive session? Alright,
Second.
Tricia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now in executive session as of 9:39 a.m.
As they're coming on. Go ahead.
So if I'd like to take a motion to come out of executive session. Seconded?
Yep.
Gary? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're officially out of executive session.
10:58.
10:58.
Tim is 10:58.
Thank you. It's a beautiful day.
Item number 12, the amended collateral on the loan request for the Bashford Lumber Company.
I'll make that motion.
Mark, second.
I'll second.
Trish. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The Ford's collateral modification request.
I'll make it.
Tim, second.
I'll second.
Mel, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. JEC Properties Upper Graphics deferral request. Make a motion on
I
that.
make the motion.
Mel,
I'll second.
Trish, second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Delinquent loan report with the write-down modifications on there. Can I get a motion for
2
that?
charge-offs.
2 charge-offs.
I'll make it. I'll second it.
Gary and Tim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any other business, Austin?
No other business other than setting the meeting date for November. We've looked at, and the date tentatively we're looking at would be November 21st. I'm just looking to see, it would be at the same time, 8:30. I just want to see what day that would be. That would be a Thursday.
Thursday.
It would be a little difficult that month because of with Thanksgiving and everything like that. I wanted to see, I know, Mark, sometimes you have issues with,
I can't make Tuesdays or Thursdays.
what if it was an afternoon meeting?
That I could do.
Could we look to have it maybe be Thursday, November 21st at 1 p.m.?
That I could do.
Sure. You're not asking me to wave my muffins, are you? Because we're at work.
Just bring your own muffin meeting.
So we're looking at 1 p.m. then on November 21st.
Sounds good.
Sorry, folks, about that.
It's okay.
It's okay. Maybe we'll be able to grab lunch again in here. That's all.
You can always meet without me.
Anything else in new business?
The only thing is for September, if you have to have a special meeting, our meeting is the week after. Did we move our regular meeting up? So that would be the special meeting, not our regular meeting? Or is that?
I think we are looking at the September 25th will be our regular meeting date. If we have to have a special meeting related to a specific item, we would schedule
You're
that.
saying in addition.
In addition
In
to,
addition to,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, no, I think that there'll be enough.
Short
other-
one topic meeting.
Not a problem.
Could be attended by phone or Zoom if
Yeah.
needed.
And it would only need like, what, 3 days of notice, Kevin? 2 days of notice?
And that's probably the 17th.
We'll
day
see.
before,
Not
you
sure
know,
yet.
I mean, around that time frame. That
Potentially, yep, potentially.
full moon.
There's a lot at stake here, so we gotta do our due diligence on this, right? Make
Okay.
sure that-
You're talking about the muffins.
Yes, so.
Can I get a
other-
motion for adjournment?
I'll make it. Oh, second.
Mark and Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are officially over.
You gotta turn off this thing here.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.